Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Cyberspin. I'm Rob Teague, the manager of CMMC services, certified assessor, provisional assessor, all those great things with CMMC for Redspin. And with me is my partner in crime, Dr. Thomas Graham, the Redspin CISO, lead assessor, and our provisional instructor. And we are honored today to have with us a very familiar face, hopefully to a lot of you, Mr. Matt Travis, the CEO of the Cyber AB. Welcome, Matt.
Rob, thanks for having me. Great to be with you and Thomas today.
Awesome. Well, Matt, so we'll get things started. So first of all, for those that may not know, if you could tell us a little bit about the Cyber AB, what it is you do, and then, why do we have the Cyber AB?
Absolutely. The Cyber AB is officially the CMMC accreditation body, and we are an independent, nonprofit, 501c3 organization based out of the National Capital Area. And we serve as the Department of Defense's exclusive non-governmental partner to implement CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification Initiative. And when I say implement, and it's in our name, so we accredit all of the C3POs, those third-party assessment organizations like Redspin, and our subordinate organization, the CAICO, the Cybersecurity Assessor and Instructor Certification Organization, certifies the individual assessors and instructors who populate the CMMC ecosystem. So really a close partner with the Department of Defense. We have a no-cost contract with them, and I'm always implored to make sure I clarify that anything I say here with you guys today does not represent the policy or positions of the Department of Defense or the U.S. government.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. And Thomas, jump in whenever you see fit. The real purpose we have Matt here today is because we want to talk about the rulemaking. There's so much conversation going on about this that it starts to get convoluted. So obviously the DOD, very busy with what they're doing, trying to get this rule into the hands of the right folks and get it on its way. So we wanted to bring Matt in so he can kind of update everybody on, first of all, what the rule is, what it looks like, and then how long do we think it's going to take. So Matt, if you could kind of tell us, first of all, the rule is going in as a proposed rule. And so maybe we should clarify the difference between a proposed rule and an interim rule.
Sure. So federal rulemaking can get pretty arcane, so we'll try to keep it at a general level to give everyone a general understanding of the process. But to your first point, federal rules really could have two designations, that propose or interim. Think of the interim as the fast track, meaning the government is looking to get the rules into an active and operational status on an accelerated timeline. Sometimes that's because of the urgency of the topic or other factors. And most rules, however, just go through as proposed and have to go through all of the process parts of the rulemaking journey before they're actually in place in the mandate. So, for example, CMMC actually has two rules, and this is a function of when the Biden administration came in and kind of reinvented CMMC or modified it really to CMMC 2.0. They created another rule. So the two rules, one deals with procurement policy. That's the Title 48 rule in the Code of Federal Regulations. The other rule is Title 32, which deals with national defense policy. That's really a good thing for CMMC because it really shows the commitment that the department and the government has to this. It's going to be ensconced in two rules. And so it's not just a procurement it's a contrivance. It's a real national defense policy, just like the aircraft carrier program or other things. So those two rules are being drafted by the rulemaking team. And rulemaking is inherently a governmental function, so they don't ask people like me to help out or industry. It's really some government officials and lawyers working internal. Now, we get asked questions and respond to RFIs, but there's not a whole lot of transparency at this phase of the rulemaking stage. Now, what happens after DOD gets finished with writing the rule, they're going to send it up to the White House to what's called the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, or OIRA, O-I-R-A. That's an organization within the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, and their job is to really coordinate all federal rules that come in. They get, by law, 90 days to review rules. That what they're doing there is more lawyers are looking at it. They're coordinating with other departments or agencies that might have equities in any particular rule that's being considered. But ultimately, they'll then publish that rule. And to your early point, Rob, if it comes out as an interim rule, then we know it's on a faster track implementation. But most rules don't. They come out as proposed rules. So after OIRA puts it out there in the Federal Register, there's a 60-day public comment period. So folks at Redspin, at the Cyber AB, all across the ecosystem, all across the defense industrial base have a chance to read the proposed rule and comment and send comments in for DoD to consider. If it has an interim status, then that rule after that 60 days can go into effect while DoD reads all the questions and responds. But most cases, again, if it's just a proposed rule, they've got to go through all those questions and generate responses before the CMMC rules are active. So if everything holds as is, when the rule goes to the White House, to OIRA, they'll look at that for 3 months or so. It'll come out 2 months of public comment, and then DoD's got to answer all the questions. That could take a while. Historically, that could take 3 months, 6 months, a year, depending how many comments they get.
Wow, that was a lot of information. So thank you for that. But yes, so a question, the rule has entered, it's been kind of tagged as a proposed rule. Could this flip while it's in OIRA or while it's going, through the widgets? Could it flip to an interim rule, or does it just stay proposed its whole route?
No, it could change. Again, I'm not an attorney, but people who are smarter on this than I am certainly expressed there's a potential for the rule status to change. You can envision if there's I'm just saying this, speculate, there's a massive cyber incident, cyber attack, that could provide a greater sense of urgency to get CMMC in place. If some of the concerns about cost or oversight, if some of the things that might lend themselves to want to take the longer route in a proposed status, if those go away or new factors come in, they could change that status to an interim. The reason the White House, OIRA, doesn't necessarily always like to give interim status to rules is the whole nature of rulemaking is somewhat extra legislative, right? So Congress gives departments some broad authorities, and in certain instances, specific laws are passed to do specific things. But most of the time, these departments and agencies like DoD have a wider latitude to execute their mission. And if they want to do something that impacts the public, has economic impact, then they have to go through the rulemaking process because Congress didn't pass a CMMC law. They gave DoD authority to protect their supply chains, but they didn't give them the authority to do CMMC. So the Administrative Act process allows rulemaking to provide more specific details, especially regulatory programs. Those regulations got to go through rulemaking because the public, since their elected representatives didn't get a chance to weigh in Congress, that public comment period of a rule is the public's chance to influence and give feedback to that rule before it does go into the Code of Federal Regulations and does essentially have the weight of a federal law. So it's not a bad thing for that proposed rule status to have to go through all that. But for folks like you and Thomas and I, who have been preparing for CMMC, helping build this ecosystem, and understand the imperative of securing the DIB supply chain, we want to get started. So there's that, you're balancing two important things, public transparency and the need to implement NIST 800-171 and get our DIB more secure.
So Matt, what I'm, just from my own layman's terms, since I'm, I just fake it really well. I keep telling you guys I'm not really that smart. What I'm hearing you say is kind of two different things. Well, two things, not necessarily different. The first is that with the rulemaking now being put in place to where it's going into the Code of Federal Regulations, the CFRs, versus just DFARs, and not only in one CFR, but two CFRs, this means it is at a higher importance to the current administration as opposed to just putting it into the DFARS regulation. Is that correct?
Somewhat. Again, I'm not an attorney on this, but I think eventually the CFR language is what allows DFARS to be modified, right? So eventually those CFR rules will result in a DFARS rule 7021 or whatever the number is going to be, right? So But you're right. The fact that there are two rules, a defense policy rule and a procurement rule, do speak to the permanence, I think, that the department's looking to get on this. Now, that doesn't mean the previous administration wasn't as committed. They took a different tack of one rule, and they actually got it through on an interim status because there really was a sense of needing to get this up and running as soon as possible. And so CMMC 1.0 enjoyed that status of an interim designation, and so it didn't have to go through the full comment period. When 2.0 came into view, 1.0 was, the pause button was hit. And because of some of the comments the department received on 1.0 about cost concerns, small business concerns, and probably most importantly, the fact there was now a second rule that hasn't been exposed or hasn't been shared with the public, that's likely the reason that there's not an interim designation on CMMC 2.0. But as Rob teed up, that could easily, that could change. I don't want to say easily change, but it's certainly, there's mechanisms that OIRA could change that. And what they do every 6 months is publish the rulemaking slate. And so I think we would know by May, June if the status of the rule is going to change or not.
And that kind of leads me into what the second item was that I was alluding to earlier, is that, one of the things Rob and I do, especially through this podcast, is we try to help you guys dispel rumors that are going on out there in the community. And one of the rumors, at least that I know I've heard, is that with the change in rulemaking, the administration is trying to, in a sense, bury the rule or just try to make it go through so many permutations that the DIB and the C3POs just throw their hands up and say, no, I'm not dealing with this anymore. What I'm hearing you say is that that's not the case with it going through the official rulemaking process. And with the steps they're doing, they're looking to take a more permanent step versus, the interim steps that may have been there before.
Yeah, Thomas, I think what's in play in terms of why this is taking, it's more of a protracted process than I think a lot of us, were hoping for, is that it is such an ambitious program. I mean, this really is the largest cybersecurity conformance regime that's been attempted when you think about how big the DIB is and how many practices are in play here with NIST 800-171. So there really is a need to make sure we get this right, all of us, the DoD, us, you guys. And I think that what you have, and I can kind of draw from my experience when I was in government, that before a department creates something like CMMC, it's not just the CMMC office that gets to determine what this looks like. They've got to coordinate it within the entire Pentagon. And so you have other offices, the services themselves, the Air Force, the Navy, Office of Small Business, the environmental. There's a lot of different players who have to sign off on how this rule reads. And that's where, that bureaucratic red tape that Washington is known for, unfortunately, comes into play, because there's just a lot of people you have to coordinate with. And if one office doesn't necessarily like the way one paragraph of the rule is written, or if they want to add in some new language, well, then everyone else has to agree to that too. So you have, the PMO, the Program Management Office for CMMC, metaphorically running around the building trying to clear language and essentially negotiate edits and revisions and additions to the rule. And so that's why it's taking the time that it is. But so in the long, I think CMMC is really the long game, right? And so we want to get started, but we want to get it right. And over the long term, the time we're spending making sure it's right will likely be worth the wait. Though I always say, global cyber threat actors are not waiting for rulemaking to finish. They are attacking us every day and will continue to do so.
Well, and that's a great point, Matt, is, the DFAR 7012 rule is still in play for a lot of these organizations. That has not gone away. And what we try to tell everybody when we're out and about or on the podcasts or webinars is the CMMC effort is really just a validation of what you've implemented for 7012. Would you agree with that?
Wholeheartedly, Rob. I mean, and that's what's a bit perplexing is I talk to a lot of the same constituencies that you do who may be pushing back a bit or skeptical that this is something they need to take seriously. A lot of companies within the defense sector already have those 7012 requirements, and they have, by signing those contracts, have agreed to implement NIST 800-171. And that's really how we got to this place, right? So initially, when that 7012 clause was put into place, that was the requirement. And unfortunately, too many companies treated it like all the other fine print in the terms and conditions of a contract, where you look through, yes, I've done this, I pay my taxes, I use E-Verify, I do cybersecurity. And DoD realized that wasn't getting it done. So, okay, we're going to make you enter scores and do a self-assessment and test in an online system that puts your scores in. And unfortunately, we're finding that too many companies were not taking that seriously. So then we create the DIBCAC, the Defense Industrial Based Cybersecurity Assessment Center, that now has the right to kind of knock on your door and do a kind of an audit or a spot check called the DIBCAC High assessments. But that's not scalable, right? And so CMMC is the long-term permanent answer, where you're using the capacity and the innovation of industry to mobilize to meet this demand, to create this ecosystem of assessors and C3POs and instructors and practitioners who can first help DIB companies prepare for CMMC, and then have the C3POs like Redspin come in and do the assessment that provides that certification, that validation that company has conformed to the standard. A lot of people just think of this as another compliance drill, and it's not. It's not a checklist inspection. DoD has set a standard for doing business with them, and companies need to meet that standard in order to be eligible to bid and win on DoD contracts once CMMC is live. And so I think a lot of times people just think this is just another requirement. It's a heavy hand of government. I get that. I certainly understand. But when you think about what's at stake, and it kind of comes back to your original point, Rob, I tell folks, step away from your DoD contract. I got to imagine your businesses have intellectual property, have financial data, have PII, have partner information that you're going to want to protect. Just put CUI, FCI aside. Why wouldn't you be implementing what I consider very basic blocking and tackling of cyber hygiene of NIST 800-171? It's, CMMC is not asking companies to install quantum computing in their environments. It's not. It is very, and you and Thomas are much more acutely intelligent on cybersecurity protections than I am, but it's not asking companies to do the impossible. I'm not saying it's a non-trivial expense. It's, it is an investment, but it's really looking at that whole corporate culture of embracing cybersecurity. It's not just a checklist of how you install this or that.
And you're absolutely correct. When I'm out in public talking, or even when I'm giving the classes, that's one of the things that I try to impress on everybody, is that an understanding this isn't just an IT activity. This isn't just an information security activity. It's an organizational activity. So it's going to require folks across the organization that may not normally be associated with information security, specifically with the confidentiality portions of CMMC Level 2, to really come into play and understand what their responsibilities are. So that way when they're working with the rest of the organization, everything is actually accomplishing the goals and is occurring how it should be occurring.
You're completely correct on that, Thomas, because what CMMC is looking to confirm is that your business has integrated basic cybersecurity protections into the culture and the operating procedures of the business, just like it would for financial responsibility, just like it would for physical security, that you're not leaving your doors unlocked at night, you're not leaving cash out on the conference room tables at night. You're not, it's like it is integrated into how you're conducting your operations as a company. That's really what CMMC is looking to do. So it's not just an IT, and it's not something that just your CISO can deliver for your company. This is not, hey, CISO, make sure we get CMMC certified. That's not going to cut it. You're going to find that you're not going to be meeting a lot of those standard requirements in the model.
Yeah, so the other thing I want to point out is that, currently right now we got the Joint Surveillance Voluntary Assessment Program going on, which is the joint effort between DIBCAC, DCMA DIBCAC, and the C3PAOs. And I do want to kind of put this out there that, the Cyber AB doesn't have anything to do with that. However, Matt Travis was a big supporter of that with his conversations in the DoD to get things moving, correct?
Well, I don't want. Listen, we support this because it's needed to get those companies who have implemented 800-171, get them started, get the CMMC movement going, even though it's not CMMC. But more importantly, frankly, from our perspective, is authorized C3POs, the assessors who have made the investment into CMMC going back, 2 to 3 years now, being able to start working. To be frank. And I really want to applaud the department, especially DCMA, the DIBCAC, who, when 2.0 was announced and everything kind of had hit pause, recognized that they had authorities under the Joint Surveillance Program to utilize the capacity of industry partners to conduct DIBCAC high assessments. The intent under Joint Surveillance is that those that are conducted at a certain score, 88, I think it will convert to level 2 CMMC. So it's a way to start getting the muscle movements of the CMMC ecosystem, get going, reward those early adopters who want to participate. And if they pass, then what DoD's intent is that certification window of the 3-year certs, that clock doesn't start until CMMC goes live. So you essentially, if you participate, high likelihood that you'll have a longer window of certification to enjoy. So the department recognized the value of this, and it's not unlike when you look at a DCAA financial audit. At least in the past, I know they've used private sector auditors to help do those audits. When your DCSA is doing a background investigation, they've used contract investigators in the past. So this is DC. MA, DIBCAC, utilizing expertise within industry for those authorized C3POs to help get the ball moving and get the ecosystem working. And it's we're looking to continue the throughput, but the initial results, as you guys know, have been promising, and we continue to support it.
Yeah, and so for the audience, we meet every Friday with Matt and his team from the Cyber AB to include all the other C3PAOs, and these are kind of the conversations we have. And although, the Cyber AB is really not playing a role right now in the joint surveillance, we are still giving feedback, at least us at Redspin, to Matt and his team on the various, assessments we're doing under the joint program, because I think it's important. It's kind of paving that way for when CMMC comes out, and it's giving Matt and his team a view of what the posture really is out there as we're moving through these. And we're not the only C3PAO. There's other brother and sister C3PAOs that are doing the same as well. So go ahead, Matt.
No, I was going to say, you're right. It's been good to see, just kind of getting in there and starting to see some of the trends that'll be helpful in sharing lessons learned to the sector as CMMC gets closer to going live. And as you allude, there are 37 authorized C3POs. I really applaud how you all work together and help us identify some challenges, make some recommendations on the whole gamut of things within CMMC. The program is still being built, obviously, since rulemaking is going on. Well, we're not involved with that. There's plenty of work that the AB does, getting all the accreditation schemes in place and getting the ecosystem in fighting shape for when the game starts for real.
Yep. So 2 last questions for you. One, with the rulemaking, once it hits the hands of OIRA, is there a way that folks can track its progress out there?
To my knowledge, no. Now, there might be other folks, Bob Metzger, Jacob Horn. There are some good experts who really know rulemaking. To my knowledge, when I was in government and here at the AB, no, that's when it goes dark. That's when, frankly, once the rule goes up to IRA, you won't really hear DoD speak at all about CMMC. They've had to lower their public profile because that's part of the process. They certainly can't speak to anything they're working on. But once they submit the rule, they'll probably go completely silent. You won't hear anything of OIRA. And it won't be until you see that proposed rule published in the Federal Register, I believe, that we'll all together get eyes on that. And I don't expect I'll be getting any advanced screenings. I mean, this is going to be it's a very strict process for obvious reasons because there's a lot at stake, and it's got to be fair for everyone in terms of when it comes out. So no, there'll be a dark period here starting very soon where we're not going to really hear much and won't get many updates.
No, and that's a great point. Last week, by the way, a time mark here. This is 3 March. We don't usually put the date on our podcast, but we want to kind of track this as it goes through rulemaking, for all of us out there. But so we were at CUICon last week, Thomas, myself, and our vice president for sales of our federal division here at Clearwater. And we met with Buddy Dees from the CIO office at the Department of Defense. And he mentioned that as well, that was his last public speaking event because as it goes into the hands of OIRA and starts to move through this widget, the DoD goes silent. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
No, we won't go silent, but again, I'm not on the inside, so I won't have much to offer other than encouragement for folks to continue to work towards implementing CMMC for the ecosystem and continue to get trained and certified and to continue to work on joint surveillance. So plenty of work to do. And, the one thing I would say, Rob, is that, this protracted rulemaking process that's going to be taking a little bit longer than any of us probably thought going back to last year, there is a silver lining. It is giving the DIB companies more time to get ready and to implement. There really will be absolutely no excuse when CMMC goes live that folks didn't have enough heads up that this was coming. You can plenty of skeptics think, well, I don't think it's ever going to happen. And listen, I talked to staffers on the Hill. There's no turning back when you think about it. Are we going to be doing less cybersecurity now than we have in the past? No, we're going to be doing more for obvious reasons. And so I really believe that the third-party validation of cybersecurity implementation will be how business is conducted moving forward, not just within the DIB, within all of GovCon and even outside critical infrastructure. You're not going to just take your business partner's word for it that they've implemented basic cyber hygiene. There's going to be a standard, whether it's CMMC or other standards, but based on 800-171 in the GovCon world. That's my view of where we're all going to end up here in a couple, 3 years. And there's no benefit in sticking your head in the sand and thinking it's not going to happen because there's just too much at stake with AI and IoT and 5G and just managing digital risk is now a CEO, board of directors priority. And even without rulemaking, there's a need for this. And so I think those of us who are in CMMC for the long haul, it's going to prove to be a very worthwhile journey. And I certainly appreciate all the work you guys have been doing to help get us to where we are.
Well, we definitely appreciate the Cyber AB because we know resources are very limited within your team, and you guys do a lot to keep us moving as C3PAOs. So we appreciate it. Okay, so last question for you as we get ready to close this out. And as Matt said, this is just going to be his personal interpretation. When do you think that the rule will probably, hit that public comment period and then be ready? Projected timeline.
When will CMMC mandate go live? Like when does the gun go off and we're all starting? It will certainly, I think, be in 2024, whether it's in Q1 or Q2. Gosh, you hope it doesn't bleed into Q3. But, as we think through this year, that holiday season is going to come into play and not a lot always gets done then. So I do think we're in the 2024 timeframe. But I don't want folks to focus on that, to be honest with you, Rob, because that's like you said on the onset, most companies have prime contracts or subcontracts that have the 7012 DFARS clause. These are requirements that they need to be implementing now anyway. And there's joint surveillance to go ahead and get your assessments. So rulemaking is great. We want the mandate to be up and running, but there is no reason not to engage in CMMC right now.
Awesome. And thank you for that, Matt. Everybody, I think that wraps it up. Thank you, Matt, for just a great conversation and enlightening us on this journey that CMMC has taken. For our listeners, the time is now. Don't wait for the rule, as you heard Matt say. We've said this over and over. You've already got compliance regulations you've got to be in compliance with. So kicking the can down the road is only going to make it worse for you. But want to thank you all for tuning in. Keep in touch with us, please, on LinkedIn. You can subscribe to this podcast. Matt Travis has a monthly Cyber AB Town Hall. Please go out to the cyberab.org website and sign up for those. A lot of great information he and his team put out to include from the CAICO. So for those interested in training and what we go through as assessors, they cover all of that in those meetings. Keep following along as we continue to provide news and updates on the CMMC rule and the CMMC initiative. But we thank you all for listening. And Matt Travis, again, thank you, sir. We're honored to have you with Redspin. We thank you for taking care of the whole ecosystem and keeping us moving forward.
No, anytime, guys. Enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good one, Matt.
Have a good one, Matt.
You too, guys.